Hello, I'm going to review Kill la Kill, so let's get started with this presentation. Kill la Kill is done by the same people who did Gurren Lagann, so naturally I was really excited to see this. So watching Kill la Kill on just at a glance when I saw the first episode, I was kind of taken out of it for a while. I liked the style, the animation style was very refreshing. I liked it a lot more than most animes I've been seeing. And especially coming up for years of not watching a lot of anime, the last anime I've seen other than Gurren Lagann was really Cowboy Bebop and Samurai Champloo. I might have watched Evangelion's 1.1 movie, but I think that's what it's called, but I didn't really see anything else other than that. So going into Kill la Kill was kind of a very refreshing anime in terms of anime style that has very contrasting colors in a good way. Everything looks very aesthetically pleasing, and I like kind of the punkiness of it. So in that presentation, the aesthetics and the style is very good, but really what kind of rubbed me the wrong way was really the sexualization of these characters. At first, I took it very seriously. I didn't really like how the characters looked very sexual, and I didn't like that these characters were wearing these kind of the uniforms are called kamuis that the two main characters wear, and I didn't really like that. For a while, I was like, these are just kind of excuses as to why these characters have to be half naked so they can deliver fan service. But really, as I got into the show more and more, really I got over that, and it started to feel more of satire, where it was just kind of making fun of other animes for having these, going out of the way for having fan service. And in a way, you could kind of look at Kill la Kill as both satirically making fun of that, and also kind of embracing it on its own. But really, once you get past that, you really see a very intense, action-packed show that doesn't really take itself too seriously. It would have been a different story if Kill la Kill was a serious anime, and I expected me to take those designs seriously. But it did come off kind of, in the back of my mind, I still think that they could have had a better design than having these characters being half naked and having some kind of half-baked reason for the characters to look that way. Like in episode 21, they did say that, well, if you're covered with 100% life fibers, you're just not gonna be able to contain it, so you kind of have to reduce it to a minimum if you're gonna be in contact with 100% life fibers. Which does make sense. It gives a reason why it has that, but it just feels kind of lame. Like, you could have easily written any other way for these characters to kind of have life fibers completely covering their body. For example, Ryuko Matoi is made out of life fibers, apparently, or at least is half life fibers, half human. She could have at least kind of connected with the life fibers that have a better tolerance to that, and not have to worry about being partially covered by it. You could have written the show like that, but instead it goes with this half-naked concept, and it doesn't really insult the viewer, and it's not really completely shitty, but it just comes off as very, it just comes off as an excuse to keep these characters in these kind of designs. Now, the first two episodes were really boring, and I didn't really care for them. Really, I was fighting myself to continue watching after I watched the first two episodes, because those two episodes were really kind of boring. The first episode does a good job kind of laying out the groundwork for the show, and it gives you the idea of what you're getting into. But other than that, it's just kind of, you just don't really have a lasting impression that makes you want to continue, because mostly it presents you with a very cut and dry, generic revenge plot where, oh, the main character Ryuko Matoi is going to Enoji Academy to find out answers on who killed her dad and any information regarding that. Okay, that's fine. That's just a very safe, generic plot to get this story going. But really, if you wanted to hook me in, that's not a really good story to hook me in the first episode to give me that kind of starter. Really, I was just watching other episodes because I kind of had them already lined up. I didn't have to wait for whatever time to get to those episodes. So really, when episode 3 rolled around, I was really floored by that episode. That episode really is when the story just kind of picked up to 11, because you knew the stakes of the characters of Sasuke Kiryuin and Ryuko Matoi. Both those characters had these high stakes in this particular fight, where if one loses, the power it could be shifted either way, because Sasuke's actually fighting someone that could be on par with her skill, and that's something that she has never encountered before since she created Hanoji Academy with all these other fight clubs. And at first I was also interested with episode 3 because it kind of started to feel like No More Heroes, where No More Heroes is a video game that was on the Wii and PS3, where it kind of had this basic revenge plot, but it had this interesting concept of you're rank 11 and you're going up against all these other assassins in this ladder almost. And in Kill la Kill, it almost kind of tries to build that structure by saying, Sasuke telling Ryuko to fight all these clubs to get to her. And at first I was like, wow, this is really insane. I can't wait to see these crazy characters and crazy fights. I can't wait to see what happens. But really by episode 5 or 6 is really when the show kind of cuts that in half and just kind of defeats it within one episode in a very slapstick, insulting way. And I didn't really like that. It wasn't really entertaining, and it didn't really feel anything other than that, because I liked the possibility of seeing each club in each episode. It led to a very interesting, like, Monster of the Week type format, but with an overlying plot, but it didn't really stick to that. And it just kind of drops that instantly, and then does this battle royale in the middle part, semi-middle part. Then when you get to the middle part, it does this raid trip, which is completely boring, and you could really take out the raid trip and not much would have changed about the plot. The only thing that you miss would be Sasuke Kiryuin taking over most of Japan. Okay, but you could kind of just do that in a different way or in a more interesting way, or just kind of keep it inclusive with Honnouji Academy. You didn't really need to venture out otherwise, because then it goes back to Honnouji Academy later on. But other than that, the presentation kind of has a weird kind of progression with the episodes, as I've kind of alluded to, where each episode kind of goes on this weird path of going in a very unique way, then taking a step back and just kind of, being boring again. Now, the animation, as good as it is, it does feel at times that the budget was either stretched too thin, or that the animation team wanted to do something very, very stylistically. For example, episode 4 was a conscious decision to have that episode be animated by a different animation team. That's why it looks completely different than the other episodes before and after it. And that's fine. Episode 4 is just fine for what it is. But when you look at the fight scenes in general of the entire show, really by the time you get into the fight scenes just end and they have an abrupt ending. And you just don't really feel any payoff to these fight scenes that really get hyped for. You get really excited, like, oh, this guy is gonna fight Ryuko again after she ran away. This is gonna be a very good fight scene. Bam, it ends before it even starts. And that is just it's kind of insulting, and it just doesn't have a payoff throughout the entire show, to the point where they're kind of playing it off as a gag. But it's fine as a gag, but there's really no substance to any of the other fight scenes to kind of make up for that loss of a fight, where everything kind of builds into the tension where you believe that, oh my god, Ryuko is going to be in some kind of tension, and by the time you realize that, she's already out of it. Like, for instance, when she's fighting Nono Jakuzure, you're like, oh my god, how is she going to beat this? This is insane. She all this stuff. She won the first round by the skin of her teeth, then she came back for an encore, and then you're like, okay, how is she going to win? Then she becomes a rocket. Like, okay, and yeah, I get that the whole show is goofy and comedic, but you need to have good fight scenes, like Gurren Lagann. And again, I really don't want to make this into a comparison video, but Gurren Lagann was a very goofy show, but the fight scenes had a lot of payoff. When they built up a fight, you knew what was at stake, and you felt that, is Simon gonna win this fight? Who knows how he's gonna win it, but he wins it at the last minute. In Kill la Kill, you don't really get that sense of tension, where you just kind of sit there and you're like, okay, at this point, Ryuko's gonna win, because she wins so many fights in the first half of the show, where then later on it doesn't really feel that there's any weight. By the time you feel a weight in the fight scenes, it's really in the last half of the show, in the last 5 episodes, which to me are really the shining stars of the show. Well, actually, the last 4 episodes are really the best parts of the show. So that's really the presentation. Everything kind of goes into this very inconsistent mess. Now, the episodes kind of goes along with what I said. Really, the best parts of the episodes are really the last half. The first half, as I said, is kind of a generic revenge plot with No More Heroes type interest that kind of gets cut short. The raid trip, I didn't really feel anything at that point. I felt strained, and I almost gave up watching the show at that point because I didn't really care. And it was just kind of exhausting to see Ryuko trying to get her Kamui stitched together, and And that's fine in the story perspective, because you kind of need to have that there, but at the same time, who really cares? I did wish by the end of the show that they kind of wrapped that up very quickly, and to the show's credit, the raid trip did not last that long, so that's fine, but I just didn't think that we needed that entirely. The episodes that really got me into it was episode 16, after that middle arc. Episode 16 got me back invested, because I loved how goofy it is, and how how far they went with it, and trying to have a sci-fi type twist on Kill la Kill with the life fibers. And that is great. I love that explanation, because like the show is completely comedic, and that episode did it in a very comedic way while being serious, at a very good balance of tones, except for the part where Satsuki's mom, Ragyo Kiryun, sorry if I mispronounced names, starts molesting her daughter. That part was just kind of weird, and it felt jarring at times, where you could have serious moments in Kill la Kill, but it just feels kind of too far in that direction, where it was just kind of like, it just kind of leaves you like, what the fuck? We just had a scene about Alien, with a reference to Alien, Michael Jackson, all this stuff, and now we're seeing this, and it's just kind of, what am I supposed to feel here? Like, I know, obviously it wants to make you feel uncomfortable and awkward, but really, why? You don't really need to make the audience do that, and you could do it in a better way without having it being so overtly awkward and just kind of distasteful at a point. I mean, it's not bad. It didn't really take me out of the show completely, but it was just like, what is this? Episode 18, where you kind of have this very predictable plot twist. It was still it was insane. It was entertaining. After that point, the show picked up, and it was just like, what's gonna happen next? And then we get to episode 20, which is by far the worst Kill la Kill episode to ever been made. I really hated this episode. The only good thing I could say about it is really the last half, the ending was the only thing that was good. Not because it was ending, but because it had good music, and it had interesting character developments and twists, but at the same time, the beginning of it and the middle of it were just atrocious. Let's start off with Ryuko Matoi at that part. We've seen her angry for 19 episodes. 19 episodes, she has been nothing but angry. Episode 20, after kind of reeling with the revelation that Ragyo Kiryun is her mom, she's still angry. Like, yeah, she has a right to be angry, but we've seen her angry the entire time. And this kind of goes into the main issue with some of the characters. Almost none of the characters are relatable, and that's an issue. Gurren Lagann, again, no mean to compare, but Gurren Lagann had relatable characters. You can sit there and look at Simone and relate to him because he's kind of this underdog character. Ryuko Matoi is just a badass, angry character that we've seen for 19 episodes. Episode 20, she's still angry. Yeah, there are scenes that she's sad, but she goes back to anger within a second. If they just kept her just feeling sad and depressed, that would have been much more interesting for the character than, I am angry at the world, even though I've been angry the entire time. It didn't give any sense of personality to Ryuko or anything other than she's angry as she's always been. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it just doesn't leave much complexity to the character other than she's angry. And there's nothing to relate to that. Ryuko is the least relative character in the show, and that's kind of a problem. And the fight scenes in episode 20 are just kind of, why bother? Really, when you take the time when you're having a fight scene that should be this epic fight scene, and have it being drawn over a black background, no background at this point, where it is one character doing this, and then another sword has no one holding and doing this, the same animation. What is the tension? And they have this other character narrating over it. Who cares? Really, at this part of the show, I was getting really irritated by Kill la Kill saying like, you expect me to take this fight scene fucking seriously? This fight scene was atrocious and it should be omitted from the show entirely. Or just redone. Just take the fight scene from 19 and just have that played. That'd be much better than having nothing. This whole fight scene felt like that they had a budget of $1. Like, what the fuck? I'm sorry if I'm getting like really angry at episode 20, but episode 20 just kind of insults me in a way where it just feels like the show is just kind of taking a shit on me. Because it expects me to take that fight seriously, or at least engaged in it. There's nothing engaging about that fight. Now let's move on to actually a better episode. Episode 21. Episode 21 was really the saving grace of Kill la Kill. After the burning knife that episode 20 was, episode 21 won me over by having this crazy intense fight scene. Even though some of the stuff is kind of reused animation, I don't care at that point. It has a very good fight scene and very good content. It's a very thick episode, and I love that. The dialogue is great. The tension is great. Everything in that episode is really what I liked about Kill la Kill in one episode. Episode 21 was great. It had the tension, it had the suspense, it had the action, it had the intense humor of it. And yeah, Ryuko is still angry, but she's crazy in that point. And that is the most entertaining thing the show did. And that's really what won me over, was having this crazy Ryuko beating the crap out of Satsuki. It was just so... that had a lot of payoff to it and was just entertaining to watch. I love that episode. That episode kind of made me go through the rest. And by the time you have the fight between Ryuko and Ragyo, was also an intense fight scene that was just fun to watch. The only negative thing I have about the entire ending was that it was kind of disappointing in the sense that with the Gurren Lagann, again, no mean to compare them, but Gurren Lagann had this sense of teamwork, and everyone had their sense of victory in some way or contribution to the end. And in Kill la Kill, not a lot of people had that. But by that point, the nudist beach characters are just there for comic relief to be slapped around. The Elite Four got incredibly nerfed for a while, where you thought that these characters had incredibly insane power. They just also kind of get slapped around and they do minor victories. And especially to the point where they kill off Gamagori to bring him back was just kind of like, you know, you could have had this nice character moment, but instead no one died at the end of Kill la Kill, which is the main disappointment thing about the show. Not to say that characters have to die for you to have a good ending, but to have an ending that gave me no sense of stakes or scale, and have no one die or the risk of dying, just kind of, you know, gave no sense of danger, and who really cares? At this point, it's Dragon Ball Z at this point. And that's the other thing with Kill la Kill, is that it becomes a Dragon Ball Z show. For a while, it was going on its own path, and it was unique and different. Then by episode 20 to 21 and so on, it becomes Dragon Ball Z with the main villain trying to destroy the world. It's like, I like the idea that they were trying to get this zombie hive mind type, motivation, but then you find out that they're trying to destroy the world, and it's like, this is Dragon Ball Z, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not very compelling from what you had in episode 16. And also, like, Satsuki and Ragyu had the most interesting conflict and issue. I would have liked it more if Satsuki at least destroyed Ragyu in that fight than having Ryuko aka Goku take care of Ragyu. Because really, Ragyu and Satsuki had a much more compelling conflict as Harime, sorry, mispronouncing names, Harime and Ryuko had a much more interesting conflict than the other two. But even then, I still enjoyed the ending for what it was, despite it being disappointing. The fight scene and the dialogue was just great. To hear Ryuko saying, that's how we roll, and people are people and clothes are clothes, were just kind of insanely funny dialogue scenes that made me just forgive it almost. Despite it being disappointing, it had a very entertaining ending with only one death that was kind of a death and wasn't really that impactful for me. Where Senketsu died, I didn't really feel anything, because that's the other thing with these characters. Neither Senketsu or Ryuko had much of a characterization to each other or development. It just was, hey, you know, I can wear you and I can tolerate you. Okay, Ryuko, alright, we can do this. Oh, we're fighting. Oh, we're friends. Okay, we're friends. Oh, I have to die now. It's like, it didn't really give any sense of weight when that character died. I felt more weight to when, after he died, and Ryuko was just falling from the atmosphere, and Satsuki was running out to catch her. That was the only time where I was like, whoa, that's some shit. But when Senketsu died, I didn't really feel anything, and I don't know why. Because I liked Senketsu as a character. Senketsu is a good character, but there was just nothing there that made me feel anything. I didn't miss him or anything. And I don't necessarily know why that well, other than I don't think that the show did a good job developing those two characters. But other than that, the characters just kind of hit or miss regardless. I like Satsuki and Ragyo Kiryuin. Those are my two favorite characters in the show. Satsuki because she's fucking Virgil. She's Virgil from Devil May Cry. She's no nonsense and she's just kind of a badass in that regard. And that was just entertaining on its own. Ragyo was just this badass with a god complex. If you know me, I love Skullgirls. One of the characters in Skullgirls I main, Eliza from Skullgirls, and she's just amazing because she has this god complex and she's just badass and all this kind of stuff. Ragyo is kind of the closest thing to an anime representation of that character. Ragyo Kiryuin is really one of my favorite characters in Kill la Kill because of just her attitude and personality, and this is also to contribute to the art style. The way that they draw her eyes were just amazing. Her and Satsuki's eyes were the best drawn eyes in anime history. I don't know exactly if that makes sense or how that sounds, but I love well-drawn eyes. Eyes are just insanely to draw. Trust me, they're crazy to draw. And seeing Ragyo and Satsuki's eyes drawn the way that they are was just like, whoa, those are nicely drawn eyes. And that drew me into that character a lot more. And it kind of shows why eyes are very important to a character design. But anyways, that's all I gotta say about that. Mr. Mohawk was kind of disappointing because he started off in a very badass way, like the Elite Four, and then by the end he was just there to be slapped around. Episode 25, which was the OVA special episode that came in with the Blu-ray release, I saw that. It's a very optional episode. There's really nothing conclusive there. I mean, it gives you the ultimate closure, but you don't really need to see it to get closure, because episode 24 kind of closes the show very well. Episode 25 is kind of an optional episode, which is just fun to watch because it had a lot of meta humor in my opinion. Other than that, Kill la Kill overall is just a fun show. The show itself doesn't take itself seriously. I think that's really what anime needs at this point, where it kind of has this nice little tongue-in-cheek humor. Some of the stuff I kind of questioned as far as character designs go, but other than that, Kill la Kill is really one of my favorite animes of 2015, and I still watch it from time to time. Is Kill la Kill my all-time favorite anime? Not really, but it's before the year, and out of all the animes I've seen in the recent years, it's really up there with one of my few favorites of most recent animes. So, do I recommend Kill la Kill? Definitely. If you're interested in watching Kill la Kill, go ahead. If sexual content doesn't really do much for you, you might want to avoid it, because there's a lot of sexual content in Kill la Kill, because the whole thing has this nudist and clothing theme that kind of just is there. So yeah, that's my review of Kill la Kill. If I were to give it a numeric score, I would give it probably an 8 out of 10. The music was really good in Kill la Kill. That's the other thing with Kill la Kill. Last thing was the music. The music was very well done, and it was just fun to listen to. I still listen to the soundtrack from time to time. So that's it. That's my review. Kill la Kill, 8 out of 10. I recommend it, and that's it. See you in the next video, guys.